Welcome to the Landmark Theater's Q&A podcast for the Anniversary Classic series. In this podcast, we celebrate the 45th anniversary of Paul Mazursky's classic Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, featuring a discussion with stars Dyan Cannon and Elliott Gould and composer Quincy Jones. Moderated by film critic Stephen Farber. Recorded at the Landmark West LA, Wednesday, August 13th, 2014.
So let me bring up our guests. What a great evening, and it was wonderful to have them here. Dyan Cannon. And of course, just to mention a few of Dyan's other movies, Heaven Can Wait, Author, Death Trap, Such Good Friends, Boynton Beach Club. She's also been a director of short film and feature film as well. Then Mr. Elliott Gould playing Ted. And of course, he's known for other films, especially MASH, The Long Goodbye, California Split. He's currently on a Ray Donovan and has a new series that he's shooting as well. And then the composer, Quincy Jones, I think, also here. Who is not only a composer, but a producer of many albums, TV shows, movies, other films that he scored, of course, The Pawnbroker, In Cold Blood, In the Heat of the Night, The Color Purple. There he is. Quincy Jones. Good to meet you. So let me start by asking maybe the two actors first. You hadn't really done too much before doing this film. How did you get involved with it? How did you get connected with Paul Mazursky and come to do the movie?
Would you like me to go first,
Sure.
Stephen? I was doing dinner theater outside of Chicago, Illinois, and my agent, Ted Witzer, asked me to fly in to audition, so they gave me the weekend off, and he said, there are two auditions for you. One is for a movie called Bob, Carol, Ted, and Alice with a director by the name of Paul Mazursky. I flew in, read the script, thought it was brilliant, was offered, and went to Universal where I had a meeting for another movie, and at Universal they offered me a 5-picture deal that weekend. A 5-picture deal, I had to give them an answer by Monday. I met with Paul and Larry, read for them, they offered me the part, and said they had to have an answer by Monday. My agent said, a bird in the hand. I said, a bird in the hand may poop on you. They said, it's a 5-picture deal, Dyan, and the other is a test. But I had a feeling about Paul, and I had a feeling about Larry, and so I dropped the bird and chose the part with Paul. I talked to Paul about it. He and Larry were so approachable. Mm-hmm. They were so down to earth. They were so real. Paul was a man who was so far ahead of his time. I mean, I still think this film holds up.
Right.
Do you? It really wasn't about the 60s. It's about the Moors.
Years ago, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
45 years.
Can you believe that, Q?
I wasn't born then.
It was not about the 60s. It was about the hearts and souls, the minds of people, in love and what they experience. And I don't think it's changed much. The same stuff is going on.
Right.
I just think he was so far ahead of his time with the close-ups and the angles and honesty of those characters. And so it was my great privilege to say yes and to be discovered, you know. I had
Right.
made some independent films, some so-called B films, but I hadn't made,
Right.
you know, I hadn't been introduced to the amazing Natalie Wood and the wonderful Bob Culp and the tremendous Elliott Gould, who I got to do most of my scenes with.
Right.
That scene in the bedroom
Yes.
where I don't want to do it and he does
Right.
was the scene they tested me with. And they used that scene at the NATO convention, wasn't that it? Yeah, that sold the film.
Uh-huh.
So it was a real coming out party, yeah, to say the least.
Maybe you could talk a little about that scene also, you know, from your point of view, Elliott. That is certainly one of the highlights of the movie and a classic scene that probably a lot of people have lived through in one way or the other. But it makes you uncomfortable because it goes on so long, but that's what accounts for the truthfulness of it.
Well, Paul and Larry had improvised it, and I was somewhat ambivalent about committing to this. I had only done 2 pictures before. I had met Mike Frankovich, the producer, and I played basketball with Paul. And they brought me into the office and played their improvisation of that. Did you ever hear it? Paul and Larry
I didn't know that.
recorded it, and they played it, and then I knew it was funny. And then I could do it.
But we didn't improvise the scene. Those lines were there.
Oh, the lines,
Yeah,
the
every
words.
word.
No, but that's how they created it. And that's once they played that for me. And of course, I'm still deeply moved at seeing Paul and Larry in the last scene.
Yeah, they're in that scene.
They were 2 that walked in that line with what the world needs now is love, sweet love. The heavy-set guy was Larry Tucker, who was Paul's co-writer. And Betsy and family, doesn't it just thrill you to see this movie again? I mean, what a brilliant filmmaker.
Both
What a brilliant
families are
film.
here. Yeah, the families are here.
So let me ask Mr. Jones, how did you get involved with the film? You'd done a number of other films before this, and what interested you about it?
Well, I got my shots. I waited a long time to get a real shot, you know. I wanted to write films since I was 15, but they didn't use black composers back then.
Right.
And I got one finally at 30, The Pawnbroker. And I thought everything was going to come rolling in after that. No way. And I had an agent that would not let me do B movies, so only A movies. So I had to wait a long time, and I got Mirage with Gregory Peck, et cetera. And then Paul asked me one day, because Columbia liked whatever I was doing, you know, fortunately. And he said, "Why aren't you doing the movie?" I said, "I read the script, Paul, and we didn't connect." And he said, "Forget the script, man." He said, "See the movie." And I signed the next day. It was so good, you know.
Right.
Using Handel with Hallelujah and what
Yes.
the world needs now is love and everything else. So this,
So
this is my homegirl. She's Tacoma. I'm from Seattle, you know.
We've known each other.
We did
way before the
Anderson
movie.
tapes together too, right?
Yes.
That was Sidney
yes.
Lumet's first hit, yeah.
That's right. And you told me on the way to New York on one of our flights that I've never forgotten what you said, Q. You said that music is considered the 6th finger of the hand and it should be included in the beginning of films. I've never forgotten that.
You know, but fortunately, I had the good fortune to have my first production in film, The Color Purple, co-produced with Steven Spielberg. And we used to call it emotion lotion music, because music can make you feel anything in a movie. If you see a girl walking down a dark hall, you know, if she doesn't have what we call, because it's all dissonance, which is dissonance and resolve. That's what all movie music is about. That's the science of it, you know. You either get people uptight or you let them relax like the end of Star Wars. And we used to call it the old shit chord. If you see this girl walking down the hall and you don't hear the old shit chord, you don't know what to get scared of. I'm serious. We had a very amazing experience back then, way back. Tom Scott's father, Nathan Scott, did the score for Lassie, and he brought in a 2.5-minute shot of Lassie crossing a vacant lot at noon, and he had 30 different composers do it. Pastoral, romantic, comedic, mysterious, killer, everything. And everything that they put down, you believed it. You felt it, you know. Because it is emotion lotion, it makes you feel. Because Stephen knows how to use emotion lotion, you know. He really does. But it's an amazing experience of film music.
And you know how to write it, Hugh.
Oh, yeah.
Now, let me ask about the final song. Of course, whenever anybody thinks of that song, they think of this movie. I think anybody, at least who has seen the movie. Now, I mean, was that always the plan to use that song at the end?
Yeah, but you know what happens is that brings your memory back because it reminds you the first time you met your girlfriend or whatever, and it was a popular song. We use Handel's Messiah,
Right.
I mean Hallelujah in the front. It's a classical thing, and at the end we use What the World Needs Now Is Love, which was in the picture too. But that's part of the psychology of what music does. It really shapes your emotions. It's emotion lotion, like Stephen always said, you know.
Right. Give us, maybe each of you could tell us a little about your impressions of Paul Mazursky, since we're sort of paying tribute to him tonight, and just what, you've all worked with many other directors, what made him stand out and an interesting talent in your view that kind of made his work special?
You want to start, Elliott?
Well, I mean, so much. I mean, Paul is so talented, and we would laugh through the years. Oh, just laugh all the time. But in this film, I had the great fortune of discovering my first objective relationship in existence, being that the 4 characters each had a fantasy. I don't think that Alice's fantasy was in the picture. I think it probably was edited out. But if you recall, the fantasy was, and we shot this at Columbia, that every man in Alice's mind wanted to dance with her. And so Paul cast perhaps 200 or so extras and me on a soundstage, all men, and you're the only woman. And we staged it all. Do you remember this?
Gosh, I'd forgotten
Wow.
about that.
Because
200 men on top of me, I remember that.
What?
Including
because-
Larry Tucker, yeah.
Yeah.
You're just about to get out, and so
Seriously, that was part of the fantasy. Go ahead,
yeah.
Elliott.
And at the same time, Hepburn and Tracy were doing Guess Who's Coming to Dinner at another soundstage at Columbia at the same time we were doing this. And so we set everything up, everything was staged, everything was lit, and we had to break for union regulations. And so they turned, the camera was set, the set was there, everybody went out. As usual, for me, I had no place to go, so I stayed. And there I was with an empty place and the camera, and this was the first time I realized, oh, the camera didn't give me, this is Paul Mazursky. The camera didn't give me problems, I gave me problems. The camera would never manipulate me, would never lie to me. It just would report what I was doing, and it really saved me. And there's also one moment in it which I saw it tonight because I came in after it had started at the pool where Bob is taking pictures and he's taking a picture of us, and I say, I don't know what to do. What should I do? And he said, do anything. And I went like that. And I asked Paul, can I do that? And that's because, I mean, I'm very self-conscious, not very secure. And Paul said, yes, do what you feel. And that was an enormous gift to me, as is Paul.
What about your feelings about him? You know, what did he help you to do as a director? What do you think made him stand out?
Well, you have a Rolls Royce and you have a Ford, you know, and they both are cars that drive, but under the hood is what makes them different. And under his hood was some very interesting mechanics, you know. He was wonderfully before his time. And he helped me, you know, I was working with the likes of these people, Natalie, who took me under her wing, very generous with me, because they were all pros, you know, and Bob, who was wonderful in the film.
Yeah.
Everyone was wonderful in the film. That wasn't a false note for me. But he made me feel very much like a woman, even when I wasn't feeling like a woman because of what I was supposed to portray, you know. And I must tell you, that scene with his psychiatrist, who sat there pulling his face. That was Paul's psychiatrist. That was the doctor he used to go to weekly.
He's funny.
So was that scene completely scripted, or was it uncomfortable?
Every word was written. I wish I was that clever. Every word was on the page.
He's still a dog, though. The psychiatrist is still a dog.
Are you seeing him?
D-A-W-G.
No,
He
we
couldn't
did
hold
that.
it in.
I was so nervous before that scene.
Because he's a real psychiatrist.
Because he was a real psychiatrist, and
Right.
I thought, this guy is going to see right through, not just the actors, through Dyan Cannon and her TT problems and all those things. But we did that in one take. That's how scared I was. I didn't want to do it over again.
Right. But Paul, I mean, would he make you feel comfortable doing a scene like that?
It all depended on what the scene was.
Yeah.
I think he got angry at Elliott and I in one of the scenes because Elliott and I, out of nerves, kept breaking up in that scene in bed. You know, that was a very touchy scene. That was a tough scene.
Right.
And Elliott, I think they might enjoy hearing something about the last scene in the movie with the four of us in bed. What Paul expected and what he didn't expect, and how everyone was acting out their own fears about that day. Because you have to, I mean, nobody was doing that in films. You didn't see four people in bed.
Not at that
right?
time, yeah.
When I started seeing films, a man was in one bed and his wife was in another bed.
Right.
And now there's four people in bed. And nobody knew what was going to happen that day. Paul admitted that. I mean, no, we weren't going to make it. We knew that. But do you want to talk a little bit about that, Elliott?
Well, I wore 2 pairs of jockey shorts. No, I only took it off once.
I'm glad. See, I didn't want to say that.
Please.
Bob was reading, and Natalie kept calling for makeup, and I was just under the covers. I mean, nobody knew. But what was his direction of us that day? Do you remember that?
My feeling was that he was organizing us. He was composing us based on what we were prepared or willing to do. And I don't think that all of us, certainly including me, were willing to do everything that one might imagine one would do. But then seeing the film tonight again, is so moving to me. You know, that song, the last song, it's what it's about. You know, and the slow motion of the 2 women and Bob and this clown gargling and brushing his teeth, you know, and also Pato Guzman. I mean, Paul made everyone a part of his family. And
that was a set decorator.
Yeah, who did many, many pictures with Paul. So it's just a great privilege to be here and together.
Quincy, you worked with some top directors. You mentioned Spielberg, Sidney Lumet, what do you think made Paul Mazursky unique? What were his special talents, and in relation to a lot of other directors, perhaps?
Well, I don't know, somehow I happened to hang out with all the comedians back in the day, from Lord Buckley to Lenny Bruce to Pryor to you name it. Robin Williams is very close. Because they have a very close affinity to jazz, and improvisation. But what's funny is Pryor said, where do you find all that joy, because I can't find it. Because they see reality, but it's through their interpretation, But they are not one that I know is as happy as what his material is, whether it's Flip Wilson or Pryor or Cosby or anybody else. I work with all of them. It's amazing relationship. It really is, They think, Lord Buckley used to say all the time in San Francisco, 50 years ago when we worked at Jimbo's, he'd imitate the Romans. Hipsters and flipsters and finger-popping daddy-os, lend me your lobes, lend me your ears, They just had a strange sense of humor, and I think directors are the same way, because the first thing I did out here before I did film was TV, A Landlord. The writers on that were Gary Marshall, what's the one that did As Big as It Gets with Nicholson?
Brooks, yeah, Jim Brooks.
Jim Brooks was one of the writers on that show. I mean, incredible writers, And I'd sit up with them some nights to just see how their minds worked, And they'd be 4 o'clock in the morning, all tired and everything else. I said, very funny. Funny. Not funny. No smile, nothing. Very funny. So funny. And I couldn't believe it because I was trying to get out of being branded as a mystery writer in Cold Blood and in the Heat of the Night and all that stuff. So that's one of the reasons I did Bob Culp, Ted and Alice and Cactus Flower with Goldie and all that stuff, to get out of that category because they stereotype you real fast, Anyway, it was an amazing process at Columbia then, because people have to guess. I guess that's the real quest of the music, of the record, the movie business, is they have to guess what's going to happen before it happens. Everything, P&A and how much the budget is and all that stuff. Who does this, who's the DP and all that stuff. It's very complicated, but I love it.
So you mentioned that this movie kind of broke new ground in many ways. I mean, if you can put yourself back in that period, I mean, do you remember kind of the impact that it had? Did it stir a lot of conversations among people sort of questioning the sexual, social mores, that these were kind of things that you hadn't seen in a movie, that started a lot of conversations among people seeing it?
Consider the possibilities. That's how it was.
That was the ad line.
Yeah,
right.
Consider the possibilities. So as a metaphor, and with the chemistry of Paul and Larry, I mean, it's a work of genius. Yes, it is. And the 60s. And
what year was it made?
It came out in '69, but
so maybe 68 or 67, but well, at the same time, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was being made.
In a very curious way, honestly, my girlfriends and I were talking about it tonight. I remember it as if it were yesterday.
You what?
I remember it as if it were yesterday.
Really?
It's that clear in my mind.
shooting the movie and all.
About the scenes, where we were, how we were. But curiously, I'd forgotten about that scene that he edited me out of. I don't like that.
No, they didn't edit you out. They edited the scene.
They edited the whole
What was that scene, Elliott? What was my fantasy?
That, well, I'll repeat it. That every man in your mind wanted to dance with you. And that
More
you're
than
the only...
that you take your second pair of shorts off.
But the men, I remember being on that stage and those men piling on top of me.
Right, and yeah, right.
You remember
And
that?
oh yeah, I remember it clearly, being on the bottom and not being able to see out of the top because all these men were. So maybe he felt, because of what you're talking about, in it being a groundbreaking film, maybe that just looked a little bit like a gangbang, and he felt that was going too far.
There's only 2 guys, though, right?
No. It wasn't these men.
Okay.
It was, he hired 100 extras, was it, Elliott?
There could have been even more
On
than
top
Yeah.
of you, 100?
Yes. Yes, I'm telling you, I'm underneath all. That was not a fantasy. That really happened.
That's heavy.
But it is, and maybe that's why he didn't. Maybe that's why he edited it. I need to know about that, Paul. I don't know. I'd forgotten about that.
I mean, one thing that I noticed in watching it again is that these very long scenes between sometimes 2 people or the 4 people, that they really allow them to play out. You don't see that too much now. Things are so chopped up and so
Short.
many cuts that. But here, I mean, of course, it gives the actors an opportunity to really play something, but it also captures the truth of the characters when a scene is allowed to play out in the way that some of these scenes were. And I wonder if you as actors found that very satisfying, and in contrast to maybe some other films you've done.
Wasn't the screenplay nominated?
Yes,
for,
it was.
Yeah, you know, I mean, so it was, their craft was great. They had done a picture before, I Love You, Alice B. Toklas,
Right.
which Paul very much wanted to direct, but couldn't direct. And this is Paul, who did Alice B. Toklas?
Yeah.
Hi Averback was
Exactly
the
right.
director.
No, Averback did it. Yeah, with Peter Sellers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But tonight, in the beginning of this film, I found myself thinking, come on, because I'm so used to the,
Yes,
you know,
faster
to a
pace.
pace.
Right.
Pushing it, yeah.
Yeah, and tonight I found, come on, and then I thought, no,
Let go.
Paul knows the rhythm here.
Right,
There's a rhythm to a film. You can feel it in the first couple minutes of a film, can't you, Q?
Emotional rhythm.
Yeah, there is an emotional. I can tell in the first couple of minutes of a film if I'm going to like it or not.
Yeah.
So I found myself, and then I got into Paul's rhythm and into the actor's rhythm, and today it's for the most part.
Right.
But life is.
You know, it's amazing. Our whole business is all based on, from my own experience anyway, on a song and a story. It covers television and movies, and the song covers records. And a good song can make the worst singer in the world a big star. But a bad song cannot be saved by the 3 greatest singers on the planet. Trust me.
Wow, that's
Ask Frank.
interesting.
It's true.
Say that one more time, Q.
A great song can make a terrible singer a star, and has many, many times.
Right. Give us a for
No
instance.
names. No names. But the 3 greatest singers cannot save it, and my brother Sinatra has been involved in that too. You know, they couldn't save it. But the same with the story. You know, the story comes first before
Yeah, in the beginning.
director,
was the
photography,
word.
and all of it. You've got a story, you don't have anything. You know,
Right.
that's what it's about.
Yes.
Joseph Campbell.
I just wanted to ask if you could talk about Bob at all, because I love Bob, and he's like so amazing in that last scene when
Bob
he looks.
Culp?
Yeah, when he looks over your shoulder, he's so amazing.
Yeah, Bob was special.
I Spy.
Yeah, I Spy.
And did you see Cosby in the scene at the factory? Very close to the camera in a red shirt. But we, when we shot the exterior of Bob and Carol's house, we were in Pasadena. And that was the night that Richard Nixon defeated Hubert Humphrey in the presidential election. And when I would watch Bob in his work prior to this, a lot of television, really smooth, handsome, having everything, I thought, this is a really hip guy. And after work, we had a half of a joint together. And years later, Bob told me that I left and he passed out in the bushes and was there for hours until the Teamsters woke him up and told him he could go home.
Okay.
Hi, Diane.
Hi.
I just wanted to know, were all of you the first choice for the movie, or were they considering other actors as well?
I think we were first choice.
I don't know.
That's what Paul told me.
I don't know.
really made a great choice.
Maybe Betsy would know that.
Paul told me that he got everybody he wanted. So
Okay.
if that was first or second or third, he got who he wanted. So
Right. Yes. Right here.
Hi. For me, this was like watching home movies because my parents did the marathon encounter groups and the naked group thingies. And I'm curious, it seemed very authentic, the way that it was written. Do you know if the writers had actually experienced any of those things, and have any of you experienced any of those things?
right after the film was over, I went to Esalen. I did. I went to Esalen, and I didn't want to get in the baths. And I lied about why I didn't. I said, I just had surgery. I don't want to get my scar wet. So a married woman and I finally got together, and
Paul did his
everybody went in that
research.
bath, and I went in this bath, and everybody from that bath came over and sat on the edge until we would get up, and those baths were hot. They were hot. But I wanted to experience. I wanted some breakthroughs. I was looking for answers. So I went to Esalen, and it was everything it promised to be.
Yes. Yes.
They did their research beforehand.
Yeah.
Okay, so they knew exactly what they were going to do. Okay.
Yeah.
Because Paul had gone.
I think Paul had told me he
Right.
and his wife went to
Who's
Esalen.
talking?
I'm Marlene,
Right.
but I know, and the two of them collaborated all the time, so they knew exactly who was doing what, when, where, and why.
Right. Yes. Yes. Right here.
Hi, my name's Deanna. I'm just a friend of the Mazursky family. Grew up with Jill, and this film for me is it's really nostalgic, but it feels so familiar too because it's my childhood in the '60s. And I was just wondering if you guys, you must feel the difference, but there's so much space in it. It's such a beautiful film for actors. And films don't give us this in a way anymore. They don't give us this they don't take the time and give us the space. And I was just wondering if anyone had any thoughts about that. I really appreciate it, so thank you.
Yeah, and it changed in 1971 from Dolby, because I got out of films then because we would record in magnetic, and they make it optical and take everything from 44 cycles, 100 cycles down, over, to tell Richard Brooks, we've got to change the speakers for the first run theaters because they can't hear. The Cold Blood was dark, And that's what discouraged me from doing films after that. But more and more, Marcia Lucas started to do 7-second cuts, and then MTV came in, started to do 1-second cuts, and it started to shrink the attention span of all of the audiences. So they couldn't hang on if it went over too long. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was referring to earlier when I said in the beginning of the film tonight, I said, come on, because we took a minute to get into the rhythm of the film, which allowed us to breathe and allowed the actors, therefore, to really not rush but take their moments. Right?
You also, for Mr. Gould, worked with Altman, who I think also cared very much about actors, as Paul Mazursky did. Is that the case that, some directors are more interested in the technical side of it probably than working with their actors? But you've worked with some directors, I think, who loved actors and loved giving actors opportunities.
Well, for me, there was no one else like Paul, and I did a great deal of work with Bob. There was no one like Bob, and so I'm blessed to have had the privilege and the opportunity and to know them and for them to be a part of my life.
All right. The other directors, Dyan, you worked with Otto Preminger, who was known to be very different in terms of kind of more of a tyrant in dealing with actors, and some directors, I guess, didn't have the same love for actors and working with them.
Yes. But I'm trying to live my life now by finding the good in every experience. And he directed a brilliant film called Laura.
Yes, yes.
That's all I have to say.
Right. Any other questions? Okay.
I want to thank you so much for the experience about the comedic timing. You were just so fabulous at doing that because it seems so natural. It came so naturally to you. The timing was fabulous.
Well, I think that was Paul and Larry. Paul for sure conducted it, gave us the opportunity to bring our work up to his criteria. And I think that's how it's the only time I've been nominated for an Academy Award.
Well,
I can't remember. But in comedy, you know, unless it's stand-up, and even in stand-up, it's not about trying to be funny. It's about going for the reality of the scene. It's going for the you got to get down to the essence of what it's about and then lift it up. So when we were off, he'd tell us. He'd say, "No, you got to go deeper. You got to go deeper." I didn't know how to play one scene, and he told me, "It's as if you've got a fire in your stomach." I said, "I don't get that, Paul." He said, "You're burning up with desire, and I want to see that, and I want to feel it." So we'd have to really go for the jugular. We'd have to really feel what was going on. That's what comedy is, seeing people that are really being what it is, and we can laugh at it, right? You're not trying to be funny.
It's great to have you all here. Thank you for coming. Was there rehearsal? Just wondering about that process.
Was there rehearsal?
Oh, yes, we did.
2
we did
weeks.
rehearse.
So that really makes a difference, I think, yes.
Yeah, but you get to know each
Well,
other.
for what you're talking about, the rhythm, and,
Yes.
you know, and that, yeah, we rehearsed for 2 weeks.
And especially having these long scenes that, almost like a play, where you would need to have that kind of preparation.
Who was famous for that was Sidney Lumet, Anderson tapes. We'd get on a stage, and he'd have the stage blocked off with tape, exactly like we were going to shoot the film, from beginning to end. And he always brought in a film ahead of schedule because of that.
You know, when we were doing The Wiz with Sidney, I did my first 5 or 6 movies with him.
Right.
But I didn't want to do The Wiz because I didn't like the script, you know. But he had all of the principals down at the hotel in Brooklyn. And Michael had already told me that he was looking for a producer. So Michael, let's think about the picture now. You don't even have a song in the picture, you know. So we had to get a song, You Can't Win with the Crows. And he was rehearsing him, and his whole role was he had full of hay in his chest, and he dotted, Confucius, dotted all these poets and philosophers. And then she said, dot, Socrates. Who the hell is Socrates, you know? Well, yeah, I know who he means. And Sidney didn't change him, and neither did Diana. And if Diana doesn't get it, then I probably got to get to him, you know, because in 3 days he's going to keep doing the same thing. I said, Michael, it's Socrates. He's saying Socrates. He said, really? Really? I said, really? It's Socrates. Unbelievable. Sid was amazing, though.
He was.
Right.
He was tough director.
Yes, he was.
I saw Paul several weeks before his demise. I know he's making the angels and God laugh now.
Yeah.
That he was on Beverly Boulevard having lunch with Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
This is just a few weeks before he passed, and the two of them had me with tears running down my face. He hadn't lost any of his humor, any of his wit, any of his vivacity, any of his divine energy of spirit. Special, special man.
Well, thank you to Elliott and Quincy and Dyan for paying tribute to Paul and joining us tonight. This has been great.
Thank you, Stephen.
Nice note, Pam.
It's a pleasure working with Jason. Thank you.
I'll see you.